Why is trucking hard today? Timothy Jensen with Jensen Transport in Independence, Iowa. Trucking is hard for a few reasons. Look behind me. It's all capital equipment. I gotta have tires, gotta have a trailer, I gotta have the parts on them, gotta have the equipment. I gotta have the same thing for trucks. Gotta have a truck, gotta have trailers, gotta have fuel, gotta have oil, gotta have all that stuff. If I don't have tires, I can't go anywhere. If I don't have oil, I don't go anywhere. If I don't have diesel, I can't go anywhere. I have to be able to take that equipment and move it someplace. All that costs money. So it's basically a sunk fixed cost that I have to have in order to do business. And if I need to have a building or something like that, then that's another one. You know, what's the other important element that I'm missing? Driver. I've got to have a driver. That's why it's so important to have good drivers too. Good drivers, they don't really cost you any money because they take care of their equipment. What does that mean? They do the pre-trip in the morning. They look at their oil levels. They check everything and make sure everything's good and functional before they go. Why? Because that avoids, problems on the road, breakdowns. Breakdowns are very expensive. Most of that is outside of your control, for what you're having to pay or the time involved. And outside of that, what do you have left? Obviously you've got driver pay, but the thing there that you don't see with the equipment, the tractors, the trailers, there's heavy vehicle use tax, there's the international fuel tax agreement. So we have to pay not only the fuel tax at the pump, but we got to file those taxes and we got to pay again in all those other states. Ton of that stuff. I got to pay, Social Security, Medicare, and anybody's working there. They also pay the same amount on their paycheck. Benefits, got to offer benefits, got to have great benefits. People need great benefits. Why? Because if they can't get it, if they're sick and they can't go to the doctor and get fixed up, then they're not going to come back to work. You got to take care of your people. People need vacation money. You got to do all that. They need retirement. They're not going to come work for you a long time without retirement. You've got to have all that stuff. The insurance costs alone are phenomenal. You got to have cargo insurance. You got to have vehicle insurance, for just liability. You run into somebody, you damage something, you got to be able to pay for that. You got to have collision insurance to fix your own stuff if you hit something. All that is incredibly expensive. You've got a vehicle license tax every year of a few $1,000s for each truck. And then there's a license tax for every trailer too. So you got a ton of stuff. So look behind me. Got a ton of equipment. Got to pay on that every year. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Look at that. That's a lot of equipment. Guess what? It's Saturday. But you got to do that. And then you got to do your annual inspections. You got to pay for those. A little piece of paper, a little sticker that goes on there. But then you got to do the work. You got to have somebody do the annual inspections, somebody check everything over, somebody check your tires, your brakes, fix all that stuff. You've got a lot of stuff involved in that. So end of the day, what does it mean if you have low freight rates and you still have to pay all these fixed costs? I can't go back to the government and say, hey, I'll pay you 60% of whatever your license fee was last year because I don't think it's worth it and business is down. They don't care. You're still going to pay that. It's difficult to go to the insurance company and say, hey, I only want to pay 80% of what my insurance premium was last year because, I don't want to have any accidents and I don't expect to have any in the future. Well, those rates are determined not by me, but they take it to the state. The state says, hey, these are fair and equitable rates. These are what you can charge in this state. So a lot of that stuff is even approved by government. So where does that leave you at the end of the day going, how do I make trucking worthwhile or profitable or pay? It's difficult, honestly. You gotta have to know your numbers. You got to understand what you're doing, where you're going, where all the money is spent. Because it's difficult. If you're not making much money and the margins are slim, you got to figure that out. So where's that come into play? How would you change this to make it a better environment for trucking? Well, you can start, if you wanted to, number one, lay people off, less drivers. Number two, sell equipment. So you can sell some trucks, sell some trailers. Why? Because you have less drivers. You don't need that stuff. When the economy's in a downturn like it is now, and depending on who's elected next president, could very well be for the next 4.5 years too. I mean, it's been like this for 3.5 now. So if it's in a downturn, no one wants to buy your used equipment. There's no value there. There's nothing. So it's pennies on the dollar. So nobody's going to come out and buy this stuff. So then what do you do? Can you lower driver wages? It's difficult to do that. People need money. Inflation's high. So if you're not going to hack your employees' wages and cut their wages down, that's really hard to do. So what's left? If you're sitting there in Washington, D.C., or you're sitting some other place, how do you make trucking pay? Because guess what? Everything at the end of the day is delivered by a truck. How do you make that work? It's easy. What's the one thing that the government has control of that they shouldn't? They really shouldn't. That makes everything in the world go. Utility prices, cost of your diesel fuel, cost of your electricity, cost of your natural gas. All that stuff comes into the fact that tires have oil in them. My engines have oil in them. My hydropacks have oil in them. My blowers have oil in them. Everything has oil in them. Everything gets greased. There's diesel in the tanks. You've got to do something. You have to expend energy to make something happen. And what is that controlled by? Number of people allowed to drill. Number of people allowed to generate electricity. However they're generating it, doesn't matter how they're generating it. If no one's generating electricity, the cost goes up. You know, even here in eastern Iowa, one of the utilities, 30% increase in your electric bill next year. And guess what? The next 2 years after that, 15% increase on top of that. That's not just another 15% increase. That's 30%. So if you take, say it's a dollar today, you take 30% increase. So next year it's going to be $1.30. Then you take another 15% of the $1.30. So that's not another 15 cents on, you know, your dollar. That's 15% of the 32. So you're not at 145. No, you're more like, you know, about 157, 159. So, and then the year after that, another 15%. So then you're taking a 15% on the 159 on top of that. So it's not another 15 cents, that's percentages. That's why, you know, school is so important to understand not only money, but percentages. So if you're in manufacturing, guess what? We've got a manufacturing business. If you're in manufacturing, your biggest, you know, variable cost, actually fixed in many ways, is your electrical, because you got to have electric to run the machines, and you're basically looking at almost a 50% increase on what you're going to be paying for electricity in the next 3 years. Guess what? There's your inflation right there. Costs are going up. Costs are going up. There's no way around it. How do you fix that? You got to get more oil out of the ground. You got to lower the cost of electricity. Everything, your entire house either works on electric, natural gas, and unless you have a generator, it doesn't work on diesel or anything else. Costs are going up, people, no matter what it is, because it's already here. So you got to lower those lower input costs of us. In order to go to work, you got to spend money. How do you spend money? Gas, diesel, natural gas, charging your electric car at home. Guess what? Something had to create that electric energy, guys. Had to do that just for you to get to work to make money. So how do you fix trucking? How do you fix railroads? How do you fix any of that stuff? You need energy, and you need a lot of it. Hey, Timothy Jensen, Jensen Transport in Independence, Iowa. Figure out your trucking. It's coming. This ain't the end, guys. This ain't the end. Have a great day.